Pope Francis's coffin arrives at St. Peter's Basilica to lie in state for 3 days, allowing the faithful to pay their final respects. The air passenger departure tax is poised to surge to $200 as soon as October, as the government rules out phased implementation, reductions, or deferrals. And 3 Chinese astronauts are ready for the Shenzhou 20 spaceflight mission tomorrow evening. Good evening. You're watching Cable News. I'm Jeremy Ju. The coffin of the late Pope Francis has been moved to St. Peter's Basilica, where it will lie in state for 3 days before his funeral on Saturday. The Vatican said the pontiff, amongst his last words, thanked his personal nurse for encouraging him to greet the crowds on Easter Sunday. Before the procession, Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the Camerlengo, led prayers and hymns for the late pontiff. Pope Francis's casket was carried from the chapel of his residence as the bells toll for the 88-year-old Pope. Thousands of mourners gathered in St. Peter's Square to pay their respects as the cortege passed. He was escorted by a procession of solemn cardinals and Swiss guards through the same piazza where he had greeted the faithful just days before in what became his final goodbye. Arriving at St. Peter's Basilica, Cardinal Farrell presided over the rite of reception, blessing the open, red-lined wooden casket with holy water and incense. Francis's body will lie in state in the Basilica for 3 days of public viewing before his funeral on Saturday, with up to 250,000 people expected to attend, including heads of state and other leaders. After the funeral, the coffin will be transferred to Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major for burial, followed by 9 days of memorial masses. Meanwhile, cardinals are continuing their meetings this week to plan the conclave to elect Francis's successor. The Vatican said the Argentine pontiff, amongst his last words, thanked his personal nurse for encouraging him to greet the crowds in St. Peter's Square on Easter Sunday. He died from a stroke and cardiac arrest the following morning, reportedly peacefully without suffering. Back to Hong Kong, the government is set to raise air passenger departure tax from $120 to $200, ruling out any phased implementation or reductions. The authorities pointed out that the new rate already strikes a balance between boosting revenue and minimizing the burden on travelers. Xiao Yun reports.
Travelers purchasing flight tickets will face an $80 increase for air passenger departure tax, a move expected to generate an additional $1.6 billion annually for government coffers. Responding to criticism that the increase is too steep and lacks justification, the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau pointed out that the last adjustment was made 22 years ago, adding that the new rate aligns with a cumulative inflation rate of around 64% over that period. Officials also emphasized that the tax hike will have a minimal impact on travelers, accounting for just 1.3% and 1.1% of total travel costs for short-haul and long-haul markets respectively for most passengers. The government noted that the tax does not apply to direct transit and connecting flight passengers and have further extended the exemption for passengers staying in Hong Kong for less than 48 hours. Authorities stressed that the adjustment is reasonable and affordable, ruling out any phased implementation, reductions, or deferrals. They also did not commit to a sunset clause should fiscal conditions improve. Tourism sector lawmaker Perry Yu said the hike failed to account for potential passenger losses and the city's standing as an international aviation hub.
其實我哋比喺深圳嗰個寶安機場咧，其實係都有成5、6倍咁樣嘅價錢嘅差距嘅喺個稅項上。
Another lawmaker, Benson Look, noted that the revised rate is 5 to 6 times higher than that in neighboring airports such as Shenzhen, and it could gradually erode Hong Kong Airport's attractiveness. The proposed amendment will be presented to the Legislative Council for approval within the next 2 to 3 months, aiming to implement on October 1st. Cheryl Yun, Cable News.
Chief Executive Zhang Li continues his visit to Zhejiang Province, focusing on technological development. He met with executives from leading tech firms and discussed potential collaborations with Hong Kong. The chief executive and his delegation visited the Hangzhou Future Sci-Tech City Exhibition Hall to learn about the region's latest advancements in smart city development and artificial intelligence. The exhibition hall prepared a special showcase for the SAR delegation, highlighting core innovations from Hangzhou's 6 Tech Dragons, a group of influential emerging tech companies, including DeepSeek. During an hour-long meeting with representatives of these firms, Li discussed cooperation opportunities and even tried out the much-anticipated domestic game Black Myth Wukong. The delegation then visited Brain Co., one of the 6 dragons, where the city chief experienced their advanced intelligent bionic hand technology. A researcher from the company used the robotic limb to write Li's name as a personalized souvenir. At robotics firm Unitree, founder Wang Xingxing welcomed the Hong Kong leader. Noting their existing operations in the SAR, Wang said his company might consider a Hong Kong listing in the future. Li will travel to neighboring Ningbo tomorrow for an Invest Hong Kong promotion event and visits to local tech companies, aiming to strengthen research ties between the two regions. The Environmental Protection Department said the city's first phase ban on single-use plastics has shown promising outcomes after 1 year of implementation. The second phase, which will ban plastic cups and boxes as well, will be launched following further discussions with the industry. Cheryl Yun has the story.
The ban on the sale and distribution of single-use plastics such as straws, cutlery, and styrofoam food containers has reached its 1-year mark. Taking to the airwaves, Steve Wong, Assistant Director of Environmental Protection and Waste Management, said the industry has adapted well to the regulations. He noted that eco-friendly products have doubled in availability since the ban's introduction, with prices steadily declining, making them more affordable for businesses. Wong added that authorities are preparing for the second phase, which will cover additional items like takeout food boxes and lids. The government plans to conduct trials with major restaurant chains by mid-year to test non-plastic alternatives. The final timeline will be set after consultations with the catering industry and manufacturers of alternative products. Stephen Chan, Assistant Environmental Affairs Manager at the Green Earth, said the first phase has delivered encouraging results, but called for further efforts to promote reusable utensils. Chan suggested that restaurants implement deposit return systems for reusable utensils and offer discounts to customers who bring their own containers. Cheryl Yun, Cable News.
China is poised to launch its Shenzhou 20 crewed spacecraft tomorrow afternoon, with a veteran astronaut leading 2 crew members on their first flight to the Tiangong space station, marking a critical step in expanding the nation's manned orbital capabilities. Quentin Yang tells us more.
The mission, led by veteran Commander Chen Dong, will carry 3 taikonauts to the Tiangong space station for a 6-month stay. Chen, 46, is embarking on his 3rd spaceflight, having previously participated in the Shenzhou 11 and Shenzhou 14 missions. This journey will solidify his status as China's most experienced astronaut, setting a new national record for cumulative time in space. Joining him are first-time astronauts Chen Zhongrui, a former Air Force pilot, and Wang Jie, a spacecraft engineer. The Shenzhou 20 mission is scheduled to blast off at 5:17 p.m. tomorrow from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwest Gansu Province. The trio will arrive at Tiangong Station about 6.5 hours after launch. overlapping briefly with the outgoing Shenzhou 19 crew, who are scheduled to return to Earth on April 29th. The incoming crew will conduct over 40 experiments, including groundbreaking research on planetarian regeneration in microgravity, a first for China's space program, and tests using zebrafish and streptomyces bacteria to study biological adaptations. They will also install space debris shields and perform 2 planned spacewalks to enhance the station's safety. Meanwhile, in a landmark update, China's space agency confirmed that Hong Kong and Macau astronauts selected as payload specialists in the 4th astronaut cohort are on track for their inaugural missions by 2026. They've adapted swiftly to training and integrated seamlessly into the team, said Lin Xiqian, spokesperson for the China Manned Space Agency. Quentin Ya, Cable News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has signaled a potential U-turn on his trade war with China, saying the high tariffs on Chinese goods will come down substantially, but it won't be zero. Anna Chen reports.
Trump's remarks made at White House yesterday appeared to mark a rhetorical climb down after weeks of tough posturing and tit-for-tat retaliation that sent tariffs on China beyond a staggering 145%.
That's true. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero. It used to be zero.
Trump believed a tariff deal with China could happen pretty quickly and promised to be good to China.
I'm not going to say, I'm going to play hardball with China. I'm going to play hardball with you, President Xi. No. We're going to be very nice. They're going to be very nice. And we'll see what happens. But ultimately, they have to make a deal because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal in the United States.
The potential U-turn came after U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the ongoing tariffs showdown against China is unsustainable and effectively embargoed trade between the world's 2 largest economies. On the other hand, Trump seemed to back off from threats to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. After days of intensifying criticisms of the central bank chief for not cutting interest rates. I have no intention of firing him, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office, adding that it is a perfect time to lower the rate. Anna Chen, Cable News.
The International Monetary Fund has downgraded its global economic growth forecast for this year and next. The IMF's latest estimates project global growth at 2.8% this year and 3% in 2026, down 0.5 and 0.3 percentage points respectively from its January forecast. The U.S. growth outlook for 2025 was cut sharply by 0.9 points to 1.8%, with 2026 growth expected at 1.7%. Meanwhile, China's forecast was revised to 4% for both years, down 0.6 and 0.5 points from earlier projections. The IMF warns that escalating trade tensions and high policy uncertainty are significantly dampening global activity. It also expects inflation to fall more slowly than anticipated, with global inflation now forecast at 4.3% this year and 3.6% in 2026. Hong Kong's headline inflation softened to 1.4% year-on-year in March, marginally below market expectations of 1.5%. The Consumer Price Index matched February's figure, reflecting stable but muted consumer price growth. Excluding one-off government relief measures such as subsidies and fee waivers, the core inflation rate stood at 1% for the month. For the first quarter of 2025, overall inflation averaged 1.6%, signaling restrained price increases across essential categories like food, housing, and utilities. A government spokesperson attributed the slowdown to declines in outbound transport and tourism expenses, likely reflecting seasonal adjustments and post-holiday price corrections. However, the city's inflation trajectory remains subdued, officials said, but cautioned that escalating geopolitical tensions and trade conflicts could disrupt supply chains, posing risks to the external price environment. Now let's take a look at the stock market. The Hang Seng Index ended the day up 510 points. Top active stocks of the day. Xiaomi was up $3.05. Alibaba was up $6. Meituan was up $3.70, and BYD was up $14.60. Onto the weather now. Mainly cloudy, hot with sunny periods during the day, a few showers later tomorrow. Occasional showers and a few thunderstorms on Friday to early Saturday. That's our news tonight. I'm Jeremy. Thank you for watching and good night.